Ladies and gentlemen, imagine walking into a room after months of silence, and suddenly, there they are, the narcissists from your past, looking straight at you, trying to read every part of you like a map they once thought they owned. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. They aren't returning out of love, regret, or care. They're returning because they sense something they can no longer control: your power, your peace, your glow. Today, I'm going to show you what happens the moment they see you again, and why this encounter can become the turning point of your life. The return of a narcissist after a long silence is almost never accidental. It may look spontaneous on the surface, a sudden message, an unexpected appearance, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" But beneath that moment lies a calculated response to something they have sensed. Narcissists are incredibly attuned to shifts in power, attention, and emotional availability. When you go quiet, when you withdraw your energy, when you no longer feed the connection that once centered them, they feel it. Silence to a narcissist isn't neutral. It's threatening. It signals a loss of control, a disruption in the dynamic they believed they had permanently secured. This is why their return isn't random. They come back the moment they sense that you've stepped into a different version of yourself, one they can't predict or command. Your absence forces them to confront a reality they deeply dislike. They are no longer the gravitational pull in your emotional universe. And for a narcissist, this is intolerable. Your silence removes their reflection, and without that reflection, they begin to feel invisible, unimportant, and unacknowledged. They cannot sit with that feeling for long. So when they reappear, it's not because they suddenly recognize your value in the healthy human way. It's not because they've realized your worth or want to make amends. They return because they sense that you've regained strength, clarity, and autonomy, qualities that threaten their ability to influence you. They return because your silence has disrupted the emotional ecosystem they depend on, and they need to know whether they can still reach you, affect you, pull you back into familiar emotional terrain. The irony is that your growth is often what calls them back, not your dependence. They are drawn to the glow of your healing, the steadiness of your boundaries, the peace they can no longer penetrate. Your evolution triggers their re-entry. But here lies the deeper truth. Their return is not a sign of love. It is a sign of loss, their loss. It is a reaction to the shifting power dynamic, a last attempt to reclaim relevance in a story that has moved on without them. When you understand that their return isn't random, you stop romanticizing it. You see it for what it is, a reflection of your strength, not their devotion. Their reappearance becomes proof that your silence is working, that your healing is visible, and that you are stepping into a life where their influence no longer defines you. And when you understand that their return is triggered by your strength, not your weakness, something else comes into focus: the power of the silence that brought you here. Silence in this journey was not just the absence of words, it was the presence of self-respect. It was the moment you stopped responding to chaos and started responding to your own soul. The quiet you created wasn't empty space. It was a boundary forming, a new identity rising, a declaration that said, "I am no longer available for my own destruction." That silence, your silence, is what shook them. Narcissists survive on emotional noise, your explanations, your defenses, your reactions, your pain. That noise feeds their sense of importance. When you stopped giving them that soundtrack, they had nothing to stand on. For the first time, they were left alone with themselves, and that is the one place they never want to be. Silence forces them into a mirror they've spent their entire lives trying to avoid. And while they felt threatened by your quiet, you were being strengthened by it. In those weeks or months of distance, something inside you settled. You started hearing your own thoughts again. You began to recognize the difference between love and manipulation, between connection and control. Silence gave you back your intuition, the very voice they tried to convince you not to trust. So when they reappear, it's because your silence has destabilized the dynamic they depended on. They come back to break it, to pull you into the noise again, to see if your quiet was temporary or transformative. But what they fail to realize is that silence has changed you. It has grounded you. It has brought you home to yourself. And that, more than anything, is what they fear. And it's exactly because that silence changed you that their next move becomes so predictable. When they realize they can't shake your peace with their absence, They try to shake it with their presence. And they do it in the way they've always done best, through charm. Charm is their favorite doorway, their smoothest disguise, their quickest shortcut back into a place they never deserved. So when they see you again after all that quiet, they don't lead with accountability or humility. They lead with sparkle, with confidence, with a warm smile that feels familiar enough to disarm you, yet rehearsed enough to be dangerous. They know their charm once worked like gravity. It pulled you in without effort, and they hope desperately that time hasn't changed that. You'll notice it immediately. The tone of their voice softens. Their eyes light up with a warmth they never offered consistently. They might admire you in a way they never did when they had you, or they may try to create a moment, a joke, a memory, a soft nostalgia, anything to make your heart skip instead of think. But beneath that charm is a frantic truth. They're not trying to reconnect, they're trying to re-enter. They're checking if they can still access the version of you who mistook their charisma for care. They're hoping your silence rebuilt strength but not discernment. But this time, you see what was once invisible. You recognize that their charm isn't an invitation. It's a strategy, a test, a probe into whether your boundaries are real or temporary. And the beauty is, your silence prepared you for this exact moment. You can feel the charm without falling into it. You can hear the music without dancing. You can witness the performance without giving them the stage again, because you've learned that charm is not love, it's camouflage, and you no longer mistake one for the other. And once that charm fails to sink into you the way it once did, something shifts in their expression. Subtle, quick, almost invisible unless you've learned how to see it. Because in that moment, they realize you're not dazzled anymore. You're not leaning in. You're not melting. You're simply observing. And that's when their instinctive calculation begins. If charm isn't enough, what else can they take? This is where the fourth truth rises. They are drawn to your glow, the light you've built during the silence. When they see you again, the very first thing they notice isn't what you're wearing or how you speak. It's your energy. They scan you for it like a thief looking for valuables. They want to know, are you brighter than before? Do you seem happier, more centered, more whole? Do you radiate something they no longer have access to? Because narcissists are attracted to vibrancy the way drought seeks water. They consume emotional brightness, not because they appreciate it, but because they cannot create their own. When you were with them, they lived off your empathy, your sensitivity, your hopefulness, your capacity to feel deeply. But now, after the silence, they sense that your glow has changed. It is no longer something they can shape or siphon. It is something you built within yourself, for yourself. And here's the twist, your glow doesn't just attract them, it threatens them. They sense strength where they once sensed need. They feel boundaries where they once felt permission. They see a person standing in front of them, not someone leaning toward them. And that disrupts their entire dynamic. So when they reach for your glow, with compliments, with nostalgia, with curious questions, understand what's really happening. They're searching for the version of you who lived to meet their needs. But all they find is a person who learned to shine without them. And that realization, more than anything else, unsettles them to their core. And when that glow both draws them in and pushes them back at the same time, they instinctively shift into their next maneuver, testing. Because once they realize they can't simply charm the light out of you, they begin searching for any old doorway they might still slip through. This is where the fifth truth becomes painfully clear. They test your borders the moment they stand before you. It happens quickly, almost artfully. They'll drop a memory that once made you emotional, just to see if it still softens your gaze. They'll mention a mistake you made long ago, watching to see if guilt still bends your posture. They might compliment you in a way that feels oddly familiar, a callback to the praise they once used to keep you close. And if none of that works, they may switch to an old wound, a subtle reference to a vulnerable moment, waiting to see if your voice trembles, the way it used to. These tests aren't random, they're strategic. Narcissists have always studied you like a map, where you were breakable, where you were tender, where you were afraid to walk away. So when your glow tells them you've changed, they begin pressing those old emotional buttons, hoping one still lights up. They're not looking for connection, they're looking for leverage. And here's the beautiful part, your silence has rewired the circuit. The buttons no longer respond the same way. The wound doesn't open. The guilt doesn't flood. The nostalgia doesn't pull you under. Instead, their tests reveal something they never expected: your emotional maturity, your clarity, your distance. You feel the tug of the past, but you don't move toward it. And that's when they start to realize the truth they feared all along. The version of you they controlled is gone, and the person standing in front of them now is someone they can no longer reach through old patterns or old wounds. It is in that realization that their power truly begins to crumble. And when every test they try falls flat, when the memories don't pull you in, when the guilt doesn't bend your spirit, when the old wounds don't reopen, they begin to feel something they never expected to feel in your presence: fear. Not fear of you, but fear of the transformation they can't undo. Because now we reach the sixth truth, the one they hide behind their forced smiles and polished confidence. They fear the new you. This fear shows itself quietly at first: a flicker in their eyes when you don't react the way you once did, a stiffening of their posture when your voice remains steady, a moment of hesitation when they realize your emotions are no longer accessible on command. They're not just confused, they're threatened. Because the new you isn't shaped by them. The new you can't be manipulated with nostalgia, charm, or emotional traps. The new you thinks, chooses, and speaks from a place they no longer control. What they see now is a person who has healed parts of themselves the narcissist relied on remaining broken. Your confidence unnerves them. Your calmness rattles them. Your emotional independence dismantles the dynamic they once considered unbreakable. Narcissists need predictable people, people whose patterns they understand, whose hearts they can push and pull at will. But your growth has rewritten your entire pattern. And it's not just that you've changed, it's that you become someone who no longer lives in reaction to them. Someone who doesn't seek their validation, doesn't fear their rejection, doesn't crave their approval. That scares them in a way they will never admit out loud. Because the moment they see the new you is the moment they realize their influence is gone, their power is fading, and their place in your life is no longer guaranteed. And nothing destabilizes a narcissist more than discovering they've been replaced, not by someone else, but by your strength. And it's that fear, quiet, hidden, but undeniable, that fuels their next reaction. Because once they realize you've become someone they can no longer predict or control, they start grasping for the last thing they believe might still work: your emotional response. This leads us straight into the seventh truth. The moment their panic becomes unmistakable, your detachment shakes them. To a narcissist, your detachment is not just surprising, it's destabilizing. They expect tension, anger, longing, anything that shows you're still emotionally invested. But when you greet them with calm neutrality, when you speak without trembling, when your eyes no longer seek theirs for direction, they feel the ground shift beneath them. Detachment is the one thing they cannot work with because it gives them nothing to manipulate. They'll try to ignite something, anything, in you. A reaction, a spark, a crack. Maybe they'll push for a deeper conversation, hoping to pull you into old emotional territory. Maybe they'll suddenly act offended, confused, or hurt, attempting to provoke guilt. Or maybe they'll even switch to arrogance, pretending your peace means nothing to them. But beneath the performance, their panic grows. Because no matter how hard they push, your emotions remain steady, like a door gently closing in front of them. Your detachment tells them the truth they dread. You no longer orbit around their approval. You no longer dance to their emotional rhythm. You no longer seek closure from someone incapable of giving it. And this calm, this unwavering stillness is something they cannot understand because they cannot control it. You are no longer feeding their ego with reactions. You're starving the very dynamic that once defined the relationship. And in that quiet, powerful detachment, they realize they've lost something far more important than your attention. They've lost their ability to shape your heart. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than discovering they no longer have a grip on the soul they once believed would always return. And in that moment, when your detachment leaves them scrambling, something profound begins to crystallize. Not for them, but for you. This is where the eighth truth takes hold. You hold the power now. Because all their strategies, all their rehearsed charm, all their probing and testing collide with the reality. that you are no longer a participant in their narrative. You are no longer the stage on which they perform. You are no longer available for manipulation. You are free, and in that freedom, the power shifts completely into your hands. They may still try, subtly or overtly, to reclaim what they believe is theirs. They may test boundaries, attempt to draw you into old emotional patterns, or even feign vulnerability. But the difference now is that you see through it all. You see it for what it is, an attempt to regain what they never truly earned. And in seeing it, you claim a power they can neither comprehend nor counter. The power of choice, the power of clarity, the power to respond or not respond on your own terms. This power is quiet but unshakable. It is the stillness behind your eyes, the steadiness in your voice, the certainty in your steps. It is knowing that your worth is no longer dictated by someone else's perception, no longer contingent on someone else's approval, and no longer negotiable. And as they reach, as they test, as they perform, they only illuminate the extent of the control you now wield simply by being fully yourself. The irony is beautiful. They came back to see if they could influence you, to see if their old holds still mattered. And in doing so, they proved the very thing they feared most, that you had moved beyond them, beyond the drama, beyond the need for validation from a heart incapable of true reciprocity. The power is yours, and it has always been waiting behind your silence. And with that power firmly in your hands comes the ninth truth, the one that transforms a moment of confrontation into a turning point in your life. Your response can end the cycle. Because now every word you speak, every pause you allow, every glance or gesture carries weight. You are no longer reacting out of old habits, fear, or longing. You are responding with intention, and that intention is the key to breaking patterns that once trapped you. The narcissist will still try to provoke, to confuse, to charm, to guilt, but you are no longer caught in their current. You can choose how to engage, or whether to engage at all. One calm statement, one refusal to be drawn into old arguments, one quiet walk away can sever the invisible strings that once bound you. This is not about vengeance or showing them what they've lost. It's about reclaiming your narrative, reclaiming your peace, and demonstrating that you are no longer available to the cycles they depended upon. Your response becomes a declaration. The patterns of the past do not define your present, and they will not dictate your future. By choosing clarity over confusion, boundaries over entanglement, and self-respect over approval, you dissolve the power they once held over your heart. And this is profound, not just for them, but for you. It is the moment when you fully recognize that liberation was never about removing them physically from your life. It was about removing their influence over your inner world. When you respond with awareness, with calm, with steadfastness, you rewrite the story. The tests, the charm, the probing, they all lose their force. And in that moment, you realize something extraordinary. The cycle ends not when they change, not when they apologize, but when you step fully into your own authority, your own voice, and your own freedom. And that power, once claimed, can never be taken away. And when you respond with clarity, with calm, and with unwavering boundaries, the 10th truth emerges, the final revelation, and the one that transforms the entire encounter into your personal victory. This is your comeback story. Because the return of a narcissist is never about them. It is a mirror, a reflection of the distance you've traveled, the strength you've built, and the life you've begun to reclaim. Their presence is a reminder not of old wounds, but of how far you've come. When they appear, hoping to disrupt your peace or reclaim what they once thought they owned, they unintentionally highlight your evolution. Every attempt to charm, manipulate, or provoke only underscores your growth. Your silence, your boundaries, your self-possession, all of it becomes proof that you have stepped into a version of yourself they can no longer touch. In a strange way, their return validates your journey. It signals that you have moved beyond the orbit of someone who thrived on control, and that you now stand fully in your own light. And this is where the story shifts completely. It is no longer about old patterns, old pain, or old influence. It is about you. It is about your courage to walk away, your patience to rebuild, and your wisdom to recognize your own worth. It is about the joy of discovering that peace, self-respect, and authenticity are not just possible, they are yours. Every moment of fear, doubt, and longing that once defined your interactions with them now becomes fuel for your liberation. So, when a narcissist sees you again after a long silence, they may come to test, charm, or provoke. But the ultimate truth is this: the encounter is not theirs to control. It is yours to witness, yours to rise above, and yours to transform into a story of resilience, empowerment, and undeniable freedom. And that, my friends, is the triumph they can never take from you. So, remember this: when a narcissist sees you again after a long silence, their actions reflect nothing about your worth and everything about their fear of losing control. Your silence, your growth, your glow, your boundaries, they cannot touch. Every test, every charm, every attempt to pull you back is proof that you have evolved beyond their reach. This moment is not theirs, it is yours. Stand tall, speak your truth, protect your peace, and embrace your freedom. Your comeback story is already written, and it begins the moment you refuse to be defined by anyone else.